Hello, and here we are for our November 2020 Unplugged drawing session, and I've had to overdub this because we were playing some cheesy Christmas music over the top of it, and we're probably not allowed to use that on this video, so I'm just redoing the narrative now to take you through what we've done. So as you can see, I'm using a mechanical pencil. This one is a Faber-Castell, but equally you can use just an ordinary pencil, of course, nicely sharpened. So I have drawn a square here, which will allow me to cut this out and stick it onto a card afterwards, because a lot of my drawings I like to make into a card, just like this one that I'm bringing for you to see. So this is what we're going to draw during this session. 4 lovely little Scandi Christmas gnomes, which is a really funny, cute picture. I found the inspiration for it on Pinterest, I think. So we're going to start off by drawing a straight line across the bottom, because that's what our little gnomes are going to stand on. So you can use a ruler or any other straight-edged thing. There we go. And so these little gnomes they can be several different shapes, heights. You can mix it up as much as you like and personalize them however you'd like to do them. This is the great thing, it's quite adaptable, this little design. So we're going to start out with a bit of a sort of squishy circle, short, fat little gnome. And then we're going to go for something that's a little bit more of an egg shape, so slightly taller. It's all about the underlying shapes. And then there's our next one. And our final shape. So that's our 4 little gnome bodies. And next up we're going to draw their little noses, or rather their big noses. So again, we can make these slightly different shapes. They can be round, they can be maybe a little bit longer and droopier. This one's sort of pointing slightly to one side as if he's looking in that direction. And there's the final one. So just draw the nose slightly down from the top of your shape. And then we're going to give them some little feet. Again, these are just little circles or ovals. Once again, you can do different size feet. So this one's got big clodhoppers. We've all got their little feet. Can't remember what I was saying at the time. You can see I'm narrating it after the fact. So I think the next thing we're going to be drawing is the beard for each of these gnomes, and again we'd like to do a different one for each gnome because that makes it fun and interesting to look at. So this one's a little bit flicky out at the side, a little bit like a skirt, and then some lines there just to give the impression of hair. And I always like to start with pencil, because then if you make mistakes you can rub them out, which is great, and then go back over it with pen afterwards. So the next gnome, he's got sort of like a dreadlock type style beard. So we're going to draw the sections sort of separately and kind of layer them on. So you can see I'm doing almost like little icicle shapes interwoven between each other. Some a bit shorter and some a bit longer. I think I coloured this one in two-tone for the final result. There we go, so he's looking like a bit of a shaggy friend. And then this next one is going to have a white beard. So we're just going to give a bit of an impression of the bottom of that beard there, just with a few sort of random lines. Some of the lines coming up a bit higher to give an impression of it being a little bit uneven across the bottom. And you'll see this much more clearly when we go over it in pen, but hopefully it's reasonably clear. And then this final one, not that different to the first one, but instead he's got a sort of a convex outer side to the beard, and again put some lines in to sort of show the hair. Okay, so they're looking quite cool already. And again, adapt these as you like. We're going to draw some hats on them next. And you can do whatever you like as patterns on those hats. So we're going to start out with the one on the left, and this is why we've drawn them so low in the frame, because the hats are going to be really tall and spindly, and they just make for a really good effect. So we go up and up and up, and obviously we're going to loop over at the top, bit of a droopy hat, and remembering to go narrower and narrower as you go up to the top of the hat. So there we go with the first hat. And then we're going to have a stripy pattern on here. Just be as creative as you want. You can put all sorts of things on there. Spots, stars, diagonal stripes, swirly shapes, anything you like. Oh, and we forgot to put his little hands on there. Some of those will have hands and some of them won't. We'll assume they've got their hands behind their backs, but again, it gives a little bit of variety for you to look at. So this next one is going to be quite a sort of tall, thin, spindly hat. So it's quite narrow across the top of his head. And then we're just going to go slightly wobbly line all the way up to the top like this. It doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be exact, because it's supposed to be a comedy sort of character. So you can do what you like with it, really. And we're going to put some dots on that in a minute, but I'll draw that in pen a bit later on. It's really funny looking at this again now and not knowing what I was saying the first time. Okay, so this one has got a slightly fatter hat. Again, it's sort of drooping over on one side with a pom-pom on the top, which is quite cool. And then down we go, getting wider towards the bottom. You can see where his sort of nose is poking from underneath the bottom of the hat. Going for a few more stripes. I wasn't very creative on these different patterns, was I? Maybe I need to think that through. One of the unpluggers drew a lovely, slightly swirly, slightly sort of Arabian Nights looking hat in this session, which was brilliant. And then our last little gnome, he's going to have a hat that sort of hangs right over the side of his head, either side. You can see it sort of goes down almost to the bottom of his beard on either side. And slightly curved over. Oh, I obviously didn't like that. The joys of working in pencil, of course. There we go, and we've got a pom-pom on the top of there as well. And we're going to do some polka dots on this one. There we go. So we've got our shapes in pencil, and we're now going to go for a pen. So I like to use these Unipin fine liners. My favourite is the 0.8, which is quite a thick line, but you can use whatever you want, a biro, a Sharpie, a fine liner, an ink pen, however you want to do it. And you have to remember that obviously there are some things in the foreground and some things in the background. So here you can still see the pencil lines of the body underneath the beard, but we're going to obviously obscure that when we rub out the body shape and put the beard in over the top. So there we go. And then just draw over with our pen, correcting anything as we go along that we maybe didn't like before. The little feet are also in the foreground, they sit sort of in front of the body, so then we draw the body around that, and the little hands. And I'll just let you enjoy the music and draw along while you go over it in pen. So there we are, we've finished drawing our 4 little gnomes, and obviously you can then go away and colour those in. Didn't have time to cover the colouring, but first of course we're going to rub out the pencil, make it nice and neat. Those pens are really nice and steadfast. They don't run, but you do need to make sure you let them dry before you start rubbing out the pencil, because it's terrible when you start rubbing it out and then smudge the pen after you've taken such a lot of care to draw such a lovely drawing. So make sure it's dry before you rub out the pencil. There we go, and don't forget to rub out that line along the bottom. Now they look lovely and neat, and they are ready to be coloured in, either in festive colours or Gryffindor house colours, which is kind of what I did here with this earlier one. There's my little logo on the back. And these make really nice cards for people. Those craft cards you can buy anywhere, Hobbycraft or on Amazon, pretty cheap. And helps you make a really nice homemade personalised card. So next up we're going for another, maybe more traditional festive picture. Again, I've drawn my square, and I'm going to take a compass this time. Actually, I'm going to show you first what we're going to draw, which is this lovely festive wreath, the range of different leaves and plants on it. These are really effective. You can do all sorts of different leaves, different times of the year. You can add in flowers, and that sort of circular shape is really flexible, and you can do lots of really lovely things with it. So grabbing my compass or a glass or something else round to draw with, make sure you've got enough room on the outside and on the inside of the circle, because the leaves obviously will kind of overlap and kind of go inwards and outwards from the circle. So we've got our circle there, and we're going to start out by mapping it out. I like to be quite even with it, so I like to have, you know, the holly at the 4 points where you can see them there, and then fill into other things in between. But if you want it to be a bit more freeform, that's obviously absolutely fine as well. So starting out with these little sprigs, kind of stems of the holly leaves. You can do them in 3s or 2s or more, or just kind of odd random leaves on their own as well. As you build up the wreath, you'll start to see what works and what you want to add in between. You can keep changing it as you go along. So basic 6-point holly leaves, what I normally do. And then you draw it with the leaf starting partway down the line, so that the line is the vein through the middle of the leaf. You'll find that depending on how closely you've drawn the stalks together, they might overlap slightly, which is quite a nice effect. You can, as you say, change your mind as you go round about how far you want them to poke out. We're drawing in pencil again, so lots of room for jigging stuff around, moving it to see what works for you and what you like as you build up the picture. Quite like drawing holly leaves, they're quite mindful to draw. Okay, so here's our last little sprig of leaves. See there, I adjusted what I'd originally done because I didn't feel that came out far enough from the side of the circle. I obviously wanted a bit of space between the leaves. Okay, so there's our starter for 10, or rather our starter for 4. And then we're ready to start thinking about what we want to put in between those sections. So the next thing we're going to do are some nice fir tree branches, Christmas tree, pine tree. So just as we did with the holly, we're just going to draw those stems or stalks, small branches, to guide us in drawing these. And again, they're just all the way around the circle, so that helps you to keep the overall shape. And then we just draw these very sort of small upward sloping needles on each of those little branches with a bit of a rounded edge. Draw them nice and close together so they look like proper fir trees. The great thing about doing this sort of thing is it is very absorbing, so time just goes by really quickly, and some of these, particularly on this sort of drawing, are quite repetitive, and it's just quite calming and soothing, especially if you put a nice bit of cheesy Christmas music on in the background. Quite often when I'm drawing I have a bit of cheesy smooth jazz on. So I don't like to listen to anything with words because I end up singing along. But that sort of, you know, instrumental, chilled out music is really conducive to a nice relaxing hour drawing. So there we go with all our little pine needles. I've obviously decided to add an extra one in there. We've got some different leaf types coming in a minute as well, so don't necessarily overcrowd it. You can see how it looks after each stage and add what you think it needs. So we can see where we've got some spaces and where we might want to put in the next type of leaf. So once again, we've drawn our stalks or branches, and I'll show you down the side here some of the different shapes of leaf. So you might have them drooping downwards slightly, pointing upwards and quite sort of even, maybe curving upwards like that, sort of a perky, lively little leaf. And it's good to kind of vary, you know, which shapes you do around your drawing so it looks interesting and lively. You can see I'm just putting them into the spaces and just building up the drawing layer by layer. I tried a little falling leaf there, but then I didn't like it because I like it nice and precise in the wreath. But you can add those sort of things kind of flying out from the side or across the middle if you want to. The middle would make a really nice place for a festive greeting, of course, if you wanted to add that in. So you can see we're just adding in our leaves wherever we think they would fit nicely. And it's really just sort of step back and look at the overall effect and see where you think they need to go. that's gone a little bit blurry. I obviously had a bit of an internet issue. Hopefully that will sort itself out in a minute. There we go. And then these next ones are little sort of single branches with teeny tiny pairs of leaves on either side and one little leaf at the end. And these just kind of poke out every now and then around the wreath. What I like to do with these is use lots of different tones of green for the different leaves, because although it's a mainly green drawing, then you get lots of different effects and colour, warmth and cool shades. See, I'm still adding in leaves. And another little branch with those tiny leaves there. I think in the poll we did during this video, quite a few people had tried actual wreath making. I've never done that. Sounds quite cool though. Then we're going in and adding our holly berries around the little sprigs of holly, like this, so you can see that lovely bright red colour pops out really beautifully in amongst all those different greens. Dark greens for the pine and a brighter green for those little tiny double leaf branches. So adding in our holly leaves scattered, holly berries scattered around. And then we're going to take our pen, and although we will be colouring over those pine branches, it's nice to keep the needles in pen, because that gives you the right effect underneath the colour. So I'll leave you with the music while you go over your drawing in pen. So you can see how much stronger it looks when you've gone over in pen. We're coming towards the end of drawing over all of those with the fine liner. There we go. And our faithful rubber to rub out the pencil, making sure of course that that pen has been able to dry first. Tidy it all up. You may like to leave it in pencil and just colour in with coloured pencils. Entirely up to you. I like to do the ink and then add the colour in. So here are my lovely Tombow watercolour water-soluble pens. I've got quite a few of these. They've got a double tip, and I find they work really nicely for this sort of drawing. I've got lots of different greens there. There's the bullet tip on one end and the brush tip on the other end, and if you want to, if you use these on watercolour paper, you can then add water and get that lovely watercolour paint effect. So I'm just starting off here colouring in the berries, so you can start to see how that will look. Again, colouring is a really mindful thing to do, so even if you don't do your colouring straight after doing your drawing, you might come back to it another day and spend a happy half hour colouring it in. So here I've got my lovely bright green for those holly leaves. I really like the effect of this with several different greens. So that's the holly, and then I've chosen a sort of slightly duller green for some of these other leaves. And there we go.